Deserts are usually described as hot environments, but from a scientific perspective, they are better described as environments with extreme thermal variability. The defining characteristic of a desert is not high temperature alone, but the speed at which heat is gained during the day and lost after sunset. This rapid exchange of energy is the primary reason why nighttime conditions in deserts can be more dangerous than daytime conditions. The first and most important factor is surface composition. Desert landscapes are dominated by sand, gravel, bare rock, and extremely dry soil. These materials have a low specific heat capacity, which means they require relatively little energy to increase in temperature and store only a small amount of thermal energy. During the day, direct solar radiation heats these surfaces quickly. Once the sun sets, the stored heat is released just as quickly back into the atmosphere. In contrast, environments with vegetation, moist soil, or water bodies retain heat more effectively. Water has a high heat capacity and releases stored energy slowly over time, stabilizing temperature changes. Deserts lack this stabilizing mechanism. With minimal vegetation and almost no soil moisture, there is nothing to slow the cooling process once solar input stops. The second major factor is atmospheric humidity. Water vapor is one of the most important components in regulating nighttime temperatures. It absorbs outgoing infrared radiation and re-emits part of it back toward the surface, reducing heat loss. Desert air contains very little water vapor. Relative humidity in many deserts frequently falls below 20% and can drop into single digits. This allows infrared radiation emitted by the ground to escape directly into the upper atmosphere with minimal resistance. Cloud cover normally plays a similar role. Clouds reflect and trap heat near the surface during nighttime hours. Deserts are characterized by clear skies, especially after sunset. The absence of clouds allows radiative cooling to proceed at maximum efficiency. Dry air combined with clear skies creates ideal conditions for rapid nighttime temperature loss. Elevation further intensifies this effect. Many deserts are located at moderate to high altitude, where the atmosphere is thinner and holds less heat. High-altitude deserts, such as the Gobi Desert, the Great Basin, and regions of the Andean Plateau frequently experience freezing nighttime temperatures, even after extremely hot days. Thin air provides little insulation, accelerating heat loss from both the ground and the human body. Measured temperature drops of 20 to 30 degrees Celsius within a few hours after sunset are common in arid regions. In some locations, the difference between daytime maximum and nighttime minimum temperatures exceeds 40 degrees Celsius. These fluctuations are not rare events. They are normal and predictable consequences of desert physics. The danger lies in human expectations. People prepare for desert heat by prioritizing hydration, shade, and protection from direct sunlight. Thermal insulation is often underestimated or ignored. Clothing suitable for daytime survival may provide little protection once temperatures collapse after sunset. The rapid transition from heat stress to cold stress can occur before the body has time to adapt. Unlike cold climates where temperatures decrease gradually, desert cooling is abrupt. There is little transitional period. Once the sun disappears, the energy balance of the environment reverses. the ground becomes a net emitter of heat, and the human body becomes a competing heat source, struggling to maintain core temperature. The desert at night is dangerous not because it becomes unpredictable or hostile, but because it follows physical laws with extreme efficiency. Dry air, bare ground, clear skies, and low heat capacity combine to remove thermal energy rapidly. This predictable process forms the foundation of every other risk encountered in desert environments. The human body is designed to function within a narrow internal temperature range. Core body temperature is normally maintained at approximately 37 degrees Celsius, 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Even small deviations from this range can significantly impair physical and cognitive performance. In desert environments, nighttime conditions directly challenge the body's ability to regulate heat, especially after prolonged exposure to daytime stress. One of the most underestimated risks in deserts at night is hypothermia. Hypothermia is commonly associated with snow, ice, and freezing climates, but it can occur in any environment where heat loss exceeds heat production. Deserts provide exactly these conditions after sunset. During the day, the human body in a desert operates under heat stress. To cool itself, it relies heavily on sweating and increased blood flow to the skin. Both mechanisms require energy and water. As a result, dehydration often begins long before nightfall, even if symptoms are not immediately obvious. Dehydration reduces blood volume and impairs circulation, making it harder for the body to distribute heat efficiently once temperatures drop. After sunset, external temperatures can fall rapidly, sometimes by tens of degrees within a few hours. The body, already fatigued and dehydrated, must suddenly switch from heat dissipation to heat conservation. This transition is not instantaneous. Metabolic processes require time and energy to adjust, and energy reserves may already be depleted. Clothing is another critical factor. In desert environments, people often wear light, breathable clothing optimized for daytime heat. While effective during the day, such clothing provides minimal insulation at night. Without additional layers, heat loss through radiation and convection increases rapidly, especially when temperatures approach or fall below 10 degrees Celsius, 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind, even at low speeds, significantly accelerates heat loss. In open desert terrain, there are few natural windbreaks. Convective cooling caused by air movement removes heat from the skin faster than still air. Combined with low humidity, this can produce a wind chill effect that further lowers perceived temperature. As core temperature begins to drop, the body responds by constricting blood vessels in the extremities to preserve heat for vital organs. This reduces dexterity and coordination. Hands become stiff, fine motor skills deteriorate, and simple tasks such as handling equipment or adjusting clothing become more difficult. Shivering is the body's primary mechanism for generating heat in cold conditions. While effective in the short term, shivering consumes large amounts of energy. In a desert context, where caloric intake may be limited and dehydration is common, sustained shivering can quickly exhaust remaining energy reserves. Once shivering stops, core temperature can fall rapidly. Cognitive impairment is another major consequence of cold exposure. Even mild hypothermia affects judgment, reaction time, and decision-making. Individuals may underestimate danger, misjudge distances, or make poor navigational choices. These effects compound other desert risks rather than replacing them. Importantly, hypothermia in deserts often develops without dramatic warning signs. There may be no snow, no ice, and no visible indicators of cold danger. The environment appears calm and dry, which can delay recognition of the problem. By the time symptoms become obvious, intervention may already be difficult. Nighttime desert conditions are particularly dangerous because they combine multiple stressors: dehydration from daytime heat, rapid environmental cooling, inadequate insulation, and limited shelter. Each factor alone might be manageable. Together, they create a situation where the human body struggles to maintain thermal balance. Hypothermia in deserts is not rare or anomalous. It is a predictable physiological response to a specific set of environmental conditions. Understanding how and why the body loses heat at night is essential for understanding why deserts become more dangerous after sunset. Navigation in desert environments relies heavily on visual cues. During daylight hours, orientation is supported by the position of the sun, shadows, distant landmarks, and contrast in terrain. Even in monotonous landscapes, the human visual system can extract enough information to estimate direction, distance, and movement. After sunset, most of these cues disappear simultaneously, creating a uniquely dangerous navigational environment. One of the primary problems is loss of horizon definition. In deserts, terrain is often flat or gently undulating, with few vertical features. At night, the boundary between ground and sky becomes indistinct. Without a clear horizon, the brain struggles to maintain spatial orientation. This leads to errors in perceived slope, distance, and direction of travel. Artificial light rarely helps. Headlamps or flashlights illuminate only a small area directly ahead. This creates a tunnel vision effect, where nearby details are visible but larger spatial context is lost. The illuminated ground appears uniform, making it difficult to judge progress or detect gradual changes in direction. Small deviations accumulate over time without being noticed. Many people assume that stars provide reliable navigation at night. In reality, star-based navigation requires training and familiarity with celestial patterns. Without this knowledge, stars can be misleading. The apparent rotation of the night sky over time can create the illusion of movement or directional drift. Additionally, deserts often lack fixed reference points to align celestial observations with ground-based movement. Another significant factor is distance misjudgment. In daylight, the brain estimates distance using size, texture, and atmospheric perspective. At night, these cues are absent or distorted. Objects may appear closer or farther than they actually are. This can cause individuals to underestimate how far they have traveled or overestimate how close they are to a destination. As a result, people may continue walking longer than intended, wasting energy and water. Deserts also increase the likelihood of circular walking patterns. Studies and field observations have shown that humans tend to walk in gradual arcs when deprived of external reference points. Minor asymmetries in stride length, muscle strength, or terrain interaction cause unintentional directional bias. In open desert environments at night, this can result in large circular paths that return individuals close to their starting point without their awareness. Fatigue amplifies all navigational errors. After sunset, cognitive load increases as the brain compensates for reduced sensory input. At the same time, physical fatigue from daytime heat and dehydration reduces attention and working memory. Decision-making becomes slower and less accurate. People are more likely to rely on intuition rather than deliberate planning, increasing the chance of mistakes. Temperature also plays a role. As the body cools, fine motor skills and proprioception decline. Balance becomes less stable and gait becomes less consistent. These changes subtly alter walking patterns, increasing directional drift over time. Combined with uneven terrain, this further degrades navigational accuracy. The absence of sound cues contributes as well. In many environments, echoes, wind noise, or distant sounds provide orientation feedback. In deserts at night, sound is often absorbed rather than reflected. The lack of auditory feedback removes another layer of spatial information that humans unconsciously use to orient themselves. Importantly, navigation failure in deserts is rarely sudden. It develops gradually through small, compounding errors. Individuals often believe they are moving correctly until exhaustion or resource depletion forces them to stop. By that point, retracing steps may be impossible. Nighttime desert navigation is dangerous not because people cannot move, but because they cannot reliably know where they are moving. The combination of visual deprivation, cognitive fatigue, and environmental uniformity creates conditions where orientation fails quietly and predictably. This makes nighttime desert travel significantly riskier than daytime movement, even when temperatures feel more comfortable. Human survival in extreme environments depends as much on cognitive performance as on physical endurance. In deserts at night, a specific combination of stressors, fatigue, dehydration, cold exposure, and sensory deprivation directly impairs brain function. These impairments increase the likelihood of poor decisions even when the individual remains conscious and mobile. One of the earliest effects is reduced attention span. After sunset, visual input decreases sharply, forcing the brain to work harder to interpret limited information. This increased cognitive load occurs at the same time that mental resources are already depleted by daytime heat stress. As a result, sustained attention becomes difficult. Individuals may fail to notice gradual changes in terrain, direction, or body condition. Dehydration plays a critical role in cognitive decline. Even mild dehydration, defined as a loss of 1 to 2% of body weight through fluid loss, has been shown to impair concentration, short-term memory, and reaction time. In desert environments, dehydration often begins during the day and continues into the night. Cold temperatures do not reverse this effect. The brain remains underhydrated, reducing its efficiency. Cold exposure further compounds the problem. As core body temperature drops, cerebral blood flow is altered. The brain prioritizes essential autonomic functions over higher-order reasoning. This shift leads to slower information processing and reduced problem-solving ability. Tasks that require planning, risk assessment, or comparison of options become increasingly difficult. A common consequence is decision inertia. Individuals delay making decisions even when action is required. This may manifest as prolonged resting without shelter, failure to adjust clothing, or hesitation to change course when navigation errors are suspected. In other cases, the opposite occurs. Impulsive decisions made without sufficient evaluation, such as walking long distances without clear orientation. Nighttime conditions also impair risk perception. Cold stress and fatigue reduce the brain's ability to accurately assess danger. Situations that would be recognized as unsafe during daylight may feel manageable or even preferable at night. For example, continuing to walk may seem safer than stopping even when energy reserves are critically low. Memory function is affected as well. Working memory capacity decreases, making it harder to track recent actions, directions taken, or elapsed time. This can lead to repeated behaviors, inefficient movement, or failure to recall planned strategies. In navigation scenarios, this often results in loss of route awareness and repetition of errors. Emotional regulation changes under these conditions. Cold exposure and fatigue increase irritability, anxiety, and feelings of isolation. These emotional states influence judgment, often leading to overly pessimistic or overly optimistic decisions. Individuals may abandon rational plans in favor of actions driven by discomfort rather than logic. Importantly, these cognitive effects do not require extreme hypothermia. Even moderate cooling combined with dehydration can significantly impair executive function. Because deserts at night appear calm and quiet, individuals may not recognize that their mental performance is declining. There are few external cues to signal danger, allowing cognitive degradation to progress unnoticed. The absence of external feedback exacerbates these issues. In populated or structured environments, mistakes are often corrected by visual, auditory, or social cues. In the desert at night, there is no such corrective mechanism. Errors persist and compound over time. Cognitive failure in deserts is rarely dramatic. It does not involve sudden confusion or loss of consciousness. Instead, it manifests as a series of small, seemingly reasonable decisions that collectively increase risk. By the time the situation is recognized as dangerous, options may already be limited. Nighttime desert conditions are particularly hazardous because they degrade decision-making gradually and quietly. The environment does not force immediate confrontation with danger. Instead, it allows cognitive performance to decline until judgment becomes unreliable. This makes night travel and activity in deserts significantly more dangerous than daytime exposure, even in the absence of obvious threats. Deserts are often perceived as lifeless environments, especially during the day. In reality, much of desert ecology is structured around nocturnal activity. Extreme daytime heat forces many organisms to remain inactive during sunlight hours and become active after sunset. This shift in biological activity creates a different risk profile at night, not because deserts become aggressive, but because human presence overlaps with ecological patterns that are usually avoided. One of the most important changes after sunset is the increase in animal movement. Many desert mammals, reptiles, and arthropods are nocturnal or crepuscular. Rodents, foxes, jackals, snakes, scorpions, and large insects emerge at night to forage, hunt, or migrate between shelters. These animals are adapted to low light conditions and often rely on vibration, scent, or infrared perception rather than vision. Human encounters with desert animals are statistically more likely at night, not because animals seek humans, but because humans move through areas that animals normally occupy when temperatures are lower. Reduced visibility increases the likelihood of accidental contact, such as stepping near burrows, resting sites, or hunting paths. Venomous species are a particular concern. Many desert snakes and scorpions are nocturnal, using cooler temperatures to conserve energy. At night, these animals may remain motionless and difficult to detect. Accidental contact is the primary cause of envenomation incidents in desert regions. Limited visibility, fatigue, and impaired reaction time increase this risk significantly. Insects also play a role. Nighttime brings increased activity of biting insects in some desert environments, particularly near temporary water sources or vegetation. While bites are rarely life-threatening, they can cause inflammation, allergic reactions, or secondary infection, especially in individuals already dehydrated or fatigued. Another ecological factor is ground instability. Many desert animals create extensive underground burrow systems. During the day, these are usually avoided or visible. At night, uneven ground becomes harder to detect. Stepping into burrows or collapsing soil can result in ankle injuries, falls, or fractures. Even minor injuries can become serious in remote desert environments where mobility is essential for survival. Plant-related risks also change at night. Many desert plants have spines, thorns, or rigid structures that are difficult to see in low light. Contact injuries to hands, legs, or eyes become more likely. Infections from minor cuts are a concern due to limited access to cleaning water and medical care. Environmental cues that normally signal danger are reduced at night. During the day, animal tracks, disturbed sand, or vegetation movement provide warnings. At night, these visual indicators are largely invisible. Auditory cues are also unreliable due to sound absorption in open desert terrain. This removes multiple layers of passive risk detection that humans rely on unconsciously. Temperature-related ecological effects also contribute indirectly. As temperatures drop, animals may move closer to heat-retaining surfaces such as rocks or human-made objects. This increases the likelihood of animals occupying the same shelters that humans seek for warmth, such as rock overhangs or ground depressions. Importantly, nighttime desert ecology does not involve increased aggression. Most desert animals actively avoid humans. The risk arises from overlap, not conflict. Humans are less perceptive, slower to react, and more likely to make contact errors, while animals are more active and less visible. Biological risks in deserts are rarely the primary cause of nighttime danger, but they act as risk multipliers. Injuries, envenomation, or infection may not be immediately fatal, but they reduce mobility, increase physiological stress, and accelerate dehydration and heat loss. In an environment where survival depends on maintaining physical and cognitive function, even small biological incidents can have disproportionate consequences. Nighttime desert ecology increases ecological interaction while simultaneously reducing human awareness and response capability. This combination creates an environment where biological risks are subtle, indirect, and often underestimated. Understanding these ecological dynamics is essential for explaining why deserts become more dangerous after sunset, even when they appear calm and inactive. Daytime conditions and nighttime conditions in desert environments differ significantly in terms of threat exposure. The difference is not subjective or anecdotal. It is measurable and supported by environmental physics, human physiology, and behavioral data. While daytime deserts are associated with extreme heat, most critical survival failures in deserts occur during or after nighttime exposure. This is not because night introduces new threats, but because it removes many of the factors that make survival manageable. During daylight hours, visibility is the dominant protective factor. Humans rely heavily on vision for navigation, threat detection, and spatial awareness. In the desert, daylight allows individuals to identify terrain features, avoid unstable ground, detect animal movement, and orient themselves using distant landmarks. Even in feature-poor environments, the ability to see far ahead significantly reduces navigational error. Daytime conditions also support predictable decision-making. Heat stress is uncomfortable and potentially dangerous, but it is immediately perceptible. The body provides clear feedback: thirst, fatigue, overheating, and pain from sun exposure. These signals prompt corrective action, such as seeking shade, resting, or reducing movement. At night, feedback is delayed and muted. Cold stress, dehydration, and cognitive decline develop gradually, often without obvious warning. Another key difference is energy management. During daylight hours, body temperature is maintained with minimal metabolic effort because the environment provides heat. At night, the body must actively generate heat to maintain core temperature. This requires calories, hydration, and intact physiological function. In desert contexts, these resources are often limited. The energy cost of staying warm at night accelerates exhaustion. Daytime deserts also allow for effective shelter use. Shade from rocks, terrain, or temporary structures reduces heat exposure. At night, shelter must serve the opposite purpose: insulation and wind protection. Many improvised shelters that are effective against sun provide little thermal protection after dark. This mismatch increases nighttime vulnerability. Statistical analyses of desert survival incidents consistently show higher mortality and injury rates associated with nighttime exposure. Search and rescue reports indicate that individuals who remain stationary or navigate during daylight have higher survival rates than those who continue movement at night. This is largely due to improved visibility, better decision-making, and reduced risk of compounding errors. Importantly, rescue probability is also higher during the day. Aerial searches, ground patrols, and visual signaling are far more effective in daylight. At night, detection becomes difficult even with advanced equipment. Individuals may be physically capable of surviving nighttime conditions, but their likelihood of being found decreases significantly. Psychological factors further favor daytime survival. Daylight supports circadian alignment, helping maintain alertness and cognitive clarity. At night, circadian rhythms promote sleep and reduced vigilance. Fighting these biological signals increases mental fatigue and decision errors. This effect is amplified when combined with cold and dehydration. None of this suggests that daytime deserts are safe environments. Heat exhaustion, dehydration, and sun exposure remain serious risks. However, these risks are linear and visible. They escalate in predictable ways and can often be managed through pacing, hydration, and shelter. Nighttime risks are nonlinear and compounding. Small problems interact and amplify one another, leading to rapid loss of function. In objective terms, deserts are safer during the day because humans are better equipped physically, cognitively, and perceptually to interact with the environment under daylight conditions. Night removes information, increases energy demand, degrades judgment, and limits rescue options. The environment does not become more hostile after sunset. Humans simply become less capable. Understanding this distinction is critical. The danger of the desert at night is not rooted in fear, mystery, or unpredictability. It is rooted in the systematic removal of advantages that humans depend on to survive. Daylight provides those advantages. Darkness takes them away. When nighttime danger in deserts is discussed, it is often framed as a collection of isolated risks: cold, disorientation, animals, fatigue. In reality, these factors do not operate independently. Desert danger at night is systemic. It emerges from the interaction of environmental physics, human physiology, and cognitive limitation, all acting at the same time. Each individual factor may appear manageable. Cold alone can be tolerated. Fatigue alone can be compensated for. Navigation errors alone can be corrected. What makes the desert at night dangerous is that these factors overlap and reinforce one another, gradually reducing the margin for error. Thermal loss increases energy demand. Increased energy demand accelerates fatigue. Fatigue impairs judgment and navigation. Navigation errors extend exposure time. Extended exposure increases thermal loss. This feedback loop does not require sudden events or dramatic triggers. It develops quietly, often without the individual realizing that conditions are worsening. One of the defining characteristics of desert risk at night is delayed consequence. Actions taken earlier, such as excessive movement during the day, insufficient hydration, or poor clothing choices, may not produce immediate effects. Their impact becomes visible hours later, when environmental conditions change and compensatory mechanisms fail. This delay creates a false sense of control. Individuals may believe they are managing the situation because nothing has gone wrong yet. In reality, risk accumulation has already begun. By the time symptoms are clearly recognized, available options may be limited. Another systemic factor is the absence of corrective feedback. In many environments, mistakes are corrected by external signals, landmarks, temperature cues, noise, social interaction, or infrastructure. The desert at night removes most of these signals. Errors persist longer and compound more easily because there is nothing to interrupt them. Importantly, desert environments do not adapt to human presence. There is no escalation, no warning phase, and no intervention. Conditions remain stable even as human capability declines. This stability is misleading. The environment appears unchanged, while the individual's ability to respond gradually degrades. From a survival analysis perspective, this makes nighttime desert exposure uniquely hazardous. Risk is not concentrated in a single moment, but distributed over time. Survival depends less on strength or endurance and more on maintaining decision quality across extended periods under declining conditions. Daylight mitigates many of these systemic risks by restoring information. Visibility improves navigation. Temperature feedback becomes immediate. Cognitive performance aligns better with circadian rhythms. Rescue and self-correction become more feasible. At night, these advantages disappear simultaneously. The desert does not become more dangerous after sunset because it changes. It becomes more dangerous because humans change. Sensory input decreases, energy demand increases, cognitive reliability declines. These changes occur predictably and consistently across desert environments worldwide. Understanding desert danger at night requires abandoning the idea of sudden threat. There is no single moment when the environment turns hostile. Instead, danger emerges from efficiency, efficient heat loss, efficient sensory reduction, efficient accumulation of small errors. This is why deserts are often survivable during the day, but unforgiving at night. The environment remains neutral. The system simply stops supporting human error. Night in the desert is dangerous not because it is extreme, but because it is precise. It follows physical and biological rules without deviation. Survival depends on recognizing this precision early before gradual loss of function becomes irreversible. One of the reasons nighttime danger in deserts is frequently underestimated is the way humans interpret risk. People tend to associate danger with visible threats, sudden events, or extreme sensations. Fire, storms, collapsing terrain, and obvious predators trigger immediate caution. Desert nights, by contrast, appear calm, stable, and unchanged. This visual neutrality leads to a systematic misunderstanding of risk. In risk analysis, environments like deserts are classified as low feedback systems. This means they provide very little immediate information about whether actions are safe or unsafe. During the day, feedback exists in the form of heat discomfort, glare, fatigue, and thirst. These signals prompt behavioral adjustment. At night, many of these signals weaken or disappear, even as underlying risk increases. Another source of misunderstanding is cultural framing. Popular representations of deserts emphasize daytime heat as the primary hazard. Survival advice, media imagery, and common narratives focus on sun exposure and dehydration. Nighttime conditions are often depicted as relief rather than escalation. This framing encourages decisions that prioritize movement or rest at night without fully accounting for the physiological and cognitive costs involved. Human adaptability also contributes to misjudgment. People are capable of functioning under moderate cold, fatigue, and low visibility for short periods. This creates confidence based on early success. Initial stability is interpreted as safety, even though desert night risk is cumulative rather than immediate. The absence of early failure delays corrective behavior. Psychologically, humans are prone to continuation bias. Once a plan is in motion, there is a tendency to continue with it despite changing conditions. In desert environments, this bias is reinforced at night because environmental change is subtle. There is no obvious moment that signals a need to stop, wait, or reverse course. Another factor is the lack of comparative reference. Many people have experience with cold nights in non-desert environments, such as forests, cities, or mountainous areas. In those settings, shelter, moisture, vegetation, and infrastructure reduce risk. The desert appears similar on the surface, but lacks these protective layers. Assumptions carried from other environments often fail in arid landscapes. Technological reliance can also increase misunderstanding. Navigation devices, artificial lighting, and weather forecasts create a perception of control. While useful, these tools do not compensate for physiological limits or cognitive decline. At night, in deserts, technology can mask vulnerability rather than reduce it, encouraging continued activity beyond safe thresholds. Importantly, desert night danger does not scale linearly with experience. Even skilled individuals can misjudge conditions if preparation is optimized for daytime exposure. Expertise reduces some risks but does not eliminate the fundamental constraints imposed by physics and human biology. No amount of familiarity changes the rate at which heat is lost or cognition degrades under stress. From an analytical perspective, desert night risk is best understood as predictable but non-intuitive. The environment behaves consistently, but the consequences of that behavior are delayed and indirect. This disconnect between cause and effect makes danger difficult to recognize in real time. Understanding this helps explain why desert night incidents often involve people who believed they were acting rationally. Decisions made under these conditions are rarely reckless. They are reasonable within a framework that underestimates cumulative risk. The desert at night does not deceive. It simply does not communicate in ways humans instinctively understand. Recognizing this mismatch is essential for reframing desert safety. Risk is not hidden, but it is quiet, gradual, and systematic. This is why nighttime deserts remain dangerous even when they feel calm, even when nothing appears to be happening, and even when previous hours have passed without incident. The absence of obvious threat is not evidence of safety. It is a characteristic of the environment itself. Desert nights provide a clear example of how environmental risk is shaped not only by external conditions but by the limits of human perception and physiology. The danger does not emerge from unpredictability or sudden change. It emerges from consistency. The desert behaves the same way every night, following the same physical rules, while human capability slowly declines. One of the central lessons of nighttime desert exposure is that comfort is not a reliable indicator of safety. Cooler temperatures may feel relieving after extreme daytime heat, but relief does not equal stability. In many cases, the moment when conditions feel most manageable is the moment when cumulative risk begins to accelerate. Another lesson is that visibility is a form of protection. Humans evolved to interpret complex environments primarily through vision. When visibility is reduced, the brain compensates by relying on memory, assumption, and expectation. In deserts at night, these compensations are often inaccurate. The environment does not provide enough information to correct them. Desert nights also highlight the importance of energy balance. Survival is not only about avoiding extremes, but about maintaining reserves. At night, energy expenditure increases due to heat loss, while energy intake and recovery decrease. This imbalance is subtle but persistent. Over time, it reduces both physical endurance and cognitive clarity. A key factor is the interaction between small decisions. No single choice is necessarily fatal. Walking a little farther, delaying rest, misjudging distance, or underestimating cold may seem minor in isolation. Combined, these decisions create conditions where recovery becomes difficult. The desert does not punish mistakes immediately. It allows them to accumulate. Nighttime deserts also demonstrate that experience does not eliminate vulnerability. Familiarity with an environment can reduce certain risks, but it does not change fundamental biological constraints. Heat loss, dehydration, circadian disruption, and cognitive fatigue affect all humans. Skill can delay failure, but it cannot remove the underlying limits. From a broader perspective, desert night risk illustrates a general principle of environmental interaction. Danger increases when feedback is delayed. When actions do not produce immediate consequences, error correction becomes difficult. Humans are well adapted to environments where mistakes are quickly noticeable. The desert at night operates on a slower, quieter timeline. This is why desert survival strategies consistently emphasize daytime movement, rest during extreme conditions, and conservative decision-making. These strategies align human activity with periods when perception, cognition, and physiology are most reliable. They do not eliminate risk, but they reduce its systemic amplification. Importantly, the desert at night is not an anomaly among environments. Similar patterns appear in polar regions, open oceans, and high-altitude plateaus. In all these settings, danger arises not from chaos, but from efficiency, efficient heat loss, efficient sensory reduction, and efficient accumulation of error. Understanding desert night danger, therefore, is not about memorizing hazards, it is about recognizing how environments expose human limits. The desert does not test strength or bravery, it tests timing, restraint, and awareness of gradual change. The most accurate way to describe nighttime desert danger is not as a threat, but as a mismatch. The environment remains stable, while human systems slowly drift out of alignment with it. Survival depends on recognizing this drift early and adjusting behavior before the margin for correction disappears. In this sense, the desert at night is not deceptive or hostile. It is precise. It behaves the same way every time. The outcome depends not on the environment's intention, but on how well human decisions respect predictable constraints. That is why deserts are often survivable during the day and unforgiving at night. The difference lies not in the land itself, but in the conditions under which humans attempt to move through it. Importantly, the calm of desert nights does not indicate absence of risk, but absence of interruption. Nothing intervenes to stop gradual decline. There is no external force to correct poor decisions or signal that margins are shrinking. The system remains quiet while internal capacity erodes. From an analytical standpoint, this makes desert nights a case study in low-noise risk environments. These are environments where danger does not announce itself, escalate visibly, or demand immediate response. Risk exists but it is expressed through slow accumulation rather than sudden events. Understanding this distinction changes how desert danger is framed. The question is not whether the environment appears threatening, but whether it provides sufficient support for human systems over time. At night, deserts do not. This perspective also explains why people often misinterpret survival outcomes after the fact. When incidents occur, they are frequently attributed to individual mistakes rather than environmental structure. In reality, the environment sets conditions where mistakes become more likely and recovery becomes less feasible. The calmness of desert nights is therefore not a contradiction, it is a characteristic. The environment does not signal urgency because it does not need to. The processes that create danger operate quietly and consistently, independent of human awareness. In this sense, desert nights are not hostile and not deceptive, they are indifferent. They do not adapt to human presence or expectation. They continue to function according to physical and biological constraints, regardless of how safe they feel. Understanding this indifference is the final step in understanding why deserts become more dangerous after sunset. The risk is not hidden, it is simply unexpressed in ways humans instinctively recognize. That is why the desert at night can feel calm, stable, and silent, and still remain one of the least forgiving environments for human error. Desert nights are not unique because of their temperature, darkness, or isolation. They are unique because they represent a broader category of environments where risk is quiet, cumulative, and structurally embedded. Understanding desert nights helps explain how humans interact with many other extreme settings, even when those settings appear calm and manageable. In environmental science, risk is often divided into acute and chronic forms. Acute risk is immediate and visible: storms, floods, fires, or collapses. Chronic risk develops gradually through prolonged exposure to conditions that reduce human performance over time. Desert nights fall almost entirely into the second category. They do not overwhelm the body or mind at once. They reduce capability step by step. This reduction is subtle. Heat loss is slow. Cognitive decline is incremental. Navigation errors are small. Each change remains below the threshold of alarm. Humans are poorly adapted to detect this kind of risk in real time. Our perception favors sharp contrasts and sudden change. When change is continuous and quiet, it is often ignored. Desert nights also illustrate how environmental neutrality can be misleading. The landscape does not actively resist human presence. There is no escalation of force, no visible hostility, and no warning sequence. The environment remains constant while the human system degrades. This creates a false impression that conditions are stable, even as margins for survival narrow. This pattern appears in other environments as well. Open oceans at night, polar regions during calm weather, and high-altitude plateaus share similar characteristics. In each case, danger does not arise from chaos, but from efficiency. Energy is lost efficiently. Sensory input is reduced efficiently. Errors accumulate efficiently. The environment does not need to change in order to become lethal. Another important lesson from desert nights is the role of timing. Many survival outcomes are determined not by what actions are taken, but by when they are taken. Decisions that are reasonable during daylight may become unsafe after sunset. The same action, walking, resting, navigating, can carry very different levels of risk depending on environmental alignment with human physiology. Desert nights also demonstrate the limits of technological mediation. Artificial light, navigation devices, and weather data improve situational awareness, but they do not restore lost biological function. They cannot replace thermal regulation, cognitive clarity, or energy balance. In low-feedback environments, technology may delay recognition of danger rather than prevent it. From a systems perspective, desert night risk emerges when supporting factors are removed simultaneously. Vision declines, temperature drops, circadian rhythms shift, energy demand increases. No single change is decisive. Together, they create conditions where recovery becomes increasingly difficult. This explains why survival strategies emphasize restraint rather than endurance. Waiting, conserving energy, and aligning activity with favorable conditions consistently outperform aggressive movement or constant action. Desert nights reward patience and penalize persistence. Importantly, this does not imply that deserts are inherently hostile or that nighttime exposure is always fatal. It means that risk management must account for cumulative effects rather than isolated hazards. Survival depends on preserving decision quality over time, not on reacting to dramatic events. Desert nights therefore serve as a clear model of how environments can remain physically stable while becoming progressively less supportive of human life. The danger lies not in what happens, but in what continues to happen without interruption. Understanding this model shifts the focus from fear to structure. It replaces the idea of sudden threat with the recognition of gradual misalignment between environment and human limits. This recognition is essential not only for desert survival, but for navigating any environment where silence replaces warning. The lesson of the desert at night is not about danger in the dramatic sense. It is about how systems fail quietly when feedback disappears and limits are reached slowly. In that silence, outcomes are decided long before they become visible.